Hello, everyone. I am very proud to be part of the Arab Strategic Forum. The fact that you guys are inviting a comedian, it means that you are running out of options. It was either me or Andrew Tate, so I'm glad that I made it. So thank you so much for having me. I know that the official name given to the speech is A Brief History of Arabs in Global Media. But I wanted to give it an unofficial name. Today, I gave it an unofficial name. It's called Better Than Fiction. At the end of the, I think my clicker is not working. Yes, it's working, okay. At the end, it will be clear why I chose that title. I'm supposed to give you a speech about Arab representation in Western media. And I have to say that this is one of those totally expected speeches. Many of you might have heard some version of this speech. Many of you even expect some of the talking points because we have been watching it, feeling it, and living it. So how does the West look at us? Well, I think we have an idea. Sometimes we are terrorists who hate America. We usually speak in a very thick accent like this. And our dialogue consists of one letter of the alphabet, which is that's it. We are drug dealers, we are weapon dealers who kidnapped Liam Neeson's daughter in the Taken movies. We were the terrorists in that cave where Iron Man commenced his origin story. Yep, we were there from the beginning. In the movie Killer Elite, Arabs appear as dysfunctional, mute, and unscrupulous camel jockeys. The main villain is Sheikh Amr, who is an oily Omani prince that kidnaps and imprisons the Western hero. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, really, Oman, the nicest people in existence, and you still find a way to drag them into this? And it really doesn't matter what are the nationalities of the terrorists. They could be Afghani, Pakistani, Albanian, or Arabs. Because for the global audience, we are all brown. We are all the same. But that's not true, because we could be light brown, dark brown, rich brown, poor brown, terrorist brown. We could have 50 shades of brown. Even in movies where Arabs have absolutely no business existing, like this movie, A Million Ways to Die in the West. An Arab cowboy in the final gunfight scene says that he cannot fight until he recites the Arab Muslim death chant, and then he proceeds to shout a long string of gibberish. There is no lack of bad Muslim examples in television series, like 24, where the terrorist is a Muslim who performs the act of wudu before committing a suicide attack. So it could be a clean job. حاجة نظيفة يعني. Or Homeland, where the poster itself is enough to tell you what kind of a dark culture we are up against, because we are going to see more of those people. Or NCIS, where we see Arabs as terrorists, while one of the NCIS team is an Israeli Mossad agent. Her name is Ziva Davis, who proudly, for no reasons, wears an IDF jacket in the show. Or Tyrant, an Israeli-American TV show where every Arab character is a psychopathic, violent, power-crazed character from hell. Even when Steven Spielberg produced the movie The Adventures of Tintin, which is essentially a children's movie, Arabs were hagglers in the souk or dense, stupid guards patrolling a palace that is ruled by a weird, bearded Arab sheikh called Bin Salad. After watching all of this, for years, people are conditioned that now our Arabic accent is scary. That's why right now on your phones, you have apps that can talk to you, like Google Maps or Waze. You can choose the language. No, you can even choose the dialect by which these apps can talk to you. You can choose any accent except the Arab accent, because that would be scary, even for us. Can you imagine driving around with Google Maps and it talks to you, and then it will tell you in 200 feet, turn left. You are arriving to your final destination. 7 years ago, a hijabi woman was in an American airport. She was talking on the phone, and she said the word, inshallah. People around her got scared, and she was reported and was prevented from boarding the plane. Now, for the non-Arab speakers, the infidels in the crowd, inshallah is an Arabic phrase that literally means if God wills. Practically, if used by an Arab, it means it's never going to happen. And because of that accent, I can never hear the voice of an Arab pilot greeting us on a domestic airlines in the United States. Can you imagine hearing this voice? Hello, this is your captain speaking. My name is Osama bin what? Osama bin what? Osama bin Johnson, that is my name. I don't know, maybe I am wrong. Maybe they are Arab pilots, but they are using alias names, fake names, so they don't scare the white people. Maybe the next time you board the plane, you'll find the pilot greeting you, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, my name is Tom Hanks. Sit back and relax, and we are going to be landing soon, inshallah. There was a time where Muslims were heroes for all the wrong reasons. Like this movie, Rambo 3. Do you remember this movie? If you don't, that's fine. It's a terrible movie. But interestingly enough, in that movie, Rambo went to Afghanistan to fight the Russians. And at the end of the movie, Rambo was surrounded by a whole Soviet brigade, and he was about to die, only to be saved at the end by a bunch of mujahideen riding horses and shouting Allahu Akbar. Maybe this is the only time in the American history where Allahu Akbar was featured positively in an American movie, despite the fact that it was shouted by a bunch of bearded Muslim men riding on horses. But shortly after, the Soviet Union fell, and the West needed a new enemy. And because of this, we were so generous and we stepped in, so I think we single-handedly saved Hollywood. The effect of this constant misrepresentation of Arabs doesn't stop at the screen. The effects continue in real life. There was a social experiment where Americans were asked if the United States should invade and bomb Agrabah. 65% answered yes. Agrabah is the fictional character, country in Aladdin, the cartoon, by the way. And even when Arabs are victims, they are portrayed as ignorant, helpless, and backward, like American war movies about the Middle East, where a good Arab is at best a hijabi woman in dirty clothes running in the middle of ruins with their children. That is a scene from The Heart Locker. Sounds familiar? It actually looks familiar because these are real scenes from Gaza. So when we see these images, they are normalized, seared in the minds of global viewers in the way that makes them believe that these images exist not because of a brutal bombing or because of war crimes by the West, but because in that movie it all started by a bad Arab who's causing all of that chaos. American characters in these movies are white saviors who come to our regions and have to do their job of killing as many Arabs as possible to save us from other Arabs. Like this movie, American Sniper. It was directed by Clint Eastwood and starring Bradley Cooper, and it portrayed the life of Chris Kyle, the deadliest sniper in American military history with 255 kills. Chris Kyle bragged in his book about killing Arabs, and the language used was ignorant and racist. But still, the movie was celebrated as an emotional and personal story because it's all about how emotional American soldiers are. This is not new, by the way. There's a running joke in Hollywood about how America invades the world, kills everybody, and then produces movies to show us how bad they feel. It's all about the thousands. It's not about the thousands of Arabs who were killed or the countless lives that were ruined. It's always about the internal struggle of the American soldier that kills them and how bad they feel afterwards. We have all seen these movies, but but only recently I found out that there's a whole genre of movies and media that has an actual definition in the Israeli propaganda playbook. In Hebrew, it's called Vorim, Yorim, Vebushim, which translates to shooting and crying. This is an expression used to describe books, films, or other forms of media that portray soldiers expressing remorse for action they were ordered to undertake during the service. This is basically a soldier being sorry for things he had to do. This non-apologetic apology is an act through which the soldier cleans their conscience without taking personal responsibility. The dilemma causes them to weep while pulling the trigger. Ya haram. But it doesn't stop at films. Just listen to the talking points of any pro-Israeli defending the violent bombing in Gaza. It's terrible to kill so many civilians and babies. We are so sorry about this. We are so sad about killing you guys. But it's just inevitable. It's unavoidable. We're sorry. Boom. Because of this mindset, you can see how headlines report Arab death. Arabs, they are never killed. They mysteriously die on their own with no outside help. Or like this church that was magically suffered a blast. Not a missile that was launched and guided by a trained soldier. No, it was just having a blast. Or this iconic headline from 2014, where a missile happens to find people. This needs no additional joke. By the way, this is the New York Times, the beacon of Western media. Now, I could have continued with more examples, citing more movies that shaped the Western minds about Arabs and Muslims, so we can all leave feeling better about ourselves, putting all the blame on the West. But instead, maybe this could be a learning experience that we can learn from. Let's look briefly at how other minorities evolved in American media. There was a time that John Wayne, by the way, this is like some of most of the movies that was made of us, including The Mummy, where even when we dead, we come back to haunt the living. But that's why. There came a time where John Wayne, a white man, played Genghis Khan. But now we have works like Fresh Off the Boat, Crazy Rich Asians, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, and an Asian superhero in the Marvel Universe in Shang-Chi. After years of being invisible in movies, black people made an incredible comeback. I'm not even talking about familiar blockbusters that we all know. I'm talking about how they claimed their place in American history. In the past, black people were almost invisible in historical war movies. You would think that they're at best low-ranking soldiers. But then they managed to produce movies like Red Tails and the Tuskegee Airmen, where for the first time people realized there was a whole black air squadron that fought the Germans, and they were awarded more of 850 medals throughout the war. When the movie Wild Wild West came out, people made fun of this and said, "What do you mean, black cowboys? That's not even real. They were all slaves." But with further research, you found out that out of 35,000 cowboys in the West, 9,000 of them were black. That's 1 in 4. And then more movies like Surrounded, Harder They Fall, Concrete Cowboys helped black people claim their place in American Western history. Jewish characters in cinema and television are funny, intelligent, complicated, nuanced, emotional, and human. They might be the most successful minority in the history of entertainment. Not only that, but even in movies that revolved around iconic Muslim characters, they managed to find a way to place themselves front and center. Ali, the film about Muhammad Ali Clay, the most iconic Muslim athlete of all time. In that movie, Will Smith played Ali. The other character that took center stage with Ali was played by Jamie Foxx, who played the role of Drew Bondini Brown, a black Jew with a very complicated and tortured character. Even in a movie that tells the story of a Muslim legend, they were there sharing attention. Now, this is not a criticism of any of these minorities. They worked hard in order to advance their stories, their characters into movie. Now, let's talk about us. What have we done? Recently, we had blockbuster movies filmed in our region. We were so happy that Hollywood would use our cities as a backdrop for some of its iconic movies, from Transformers to Mission Impossible to The Fast and the Furious. But I bet you that none of you can remember a single memorable Arab character in these movies. Yes, it's important to show off our countries, our cities, our monuments. But what captures the minds and the hearts of the audience is human stories and human narratives. Other people have invested in showing off their characters, their people, while we have invested in showing us our places. And the thing is, we don't even have to make up these stories. We, as Arabs and Muslims, are already there, present in the contemporary Western history. African Muslims were an integral part of creating America, from mapping its borders to fighting against British rule. There were almost 300 Muslims who fought with Lincoln in the American Civil War to free black people from slavery. Algerian imams of the great mosques in Paris protected and hid Jews from the Nazis. Or this incredible story of Dr. Muhammad Helmi, an Egyptian doctor who lived in 1920s Berlin, with many Arabs, nationals, who went there to study medicine, engineering, and journalism, and became an integral part of the fabric of German society. Helmi lived in the Jewish ghetto, and he was trained by Jewish doctors. When the Nazis took over, he formed an underground network with other Arabs who owned cinemas, bars, and jazz clubs. They saved 300 Jews from the Holocaust, including a little girl, her name was Anna, whom he took in, pretended she was his niece, named her Nadia, taught her Arabic, and hid her in plain sight under the noses of the Nazis, pretending she was his nurse. This incredible story was featured in a German book called The Muslim and the Jew. and was recently translated into English as Anna and Dr. Helmi. Now, why do I know this story? Because for 7 years, I have chased the author of that book. And only this year, I got the movie rights to produce this story. Because this is how you make changes. We have these wonderful true stories that naturally insert us in the history and the culture of Western entertainment. We need to encourage Hollywood to promote our image. And this is not something that's new or unusual. The American Army spends billions of dollars to finance and even co-write movies that promote the image of the US Army and put them in a positive light. What we see on screen, what we consume in the media, shapes our perception towards people. It doesn't matter if we are light brown, or rich brown, or dark brown, living in the Middle East brown, or an American passport holder brown. In the minds of the world, we are dispensable brown. We need to do something for the coming generation so we don't end up as dead brown killed by crying white soldiers as they pull the trigger. No brown is immune, even if you live there in the United States. This has affected me on a personal level. 6 years ago, I had my son born in the United States. I named him Adam. Now, if you don't know this, Adam is the most common name for Arab boys born in America after 9/11. Why? Well, it's a TSA-friendly name. It's also a Muslim name, but not too Muslim-y. It's Muslim light. It has the advantages of not changing from English to Arabic, because if you name someone Farid, it will change to Freddy. If you name him Omar, it will change to Omar. If you name him Muhammad, it will change to get out of my country, you freaking terrorists. It is so interesting when white families have a child in America, they have to think about putting them through college. When we have a child in America, we have to think about putting him through airport security. Now imagine living in the land of the free and still having second thoughts about a basic right, which is naming your own son, because you are a certain shade of brown. But despite all of this, there is something positive happening. A new narrative is being created. Organically. We have seen how the world rejected the mainstream media narrative and sympathized with the people of Gaza. Many attributed this to the young generation of TikTok and other social media platforms. But there is another secret weapon. Many of these young people were second and third generation Arab immigrants. We as Arabs are newer immigrants to the West. Only now there's a whole generation that understands how to speak to the West. The younger Arab generation in the West is an untapped soft power. We need to give them ammunition by investing differently in Hollywood to advance our stories. We don't need to make up the stories. They are already there. That's why I unofficially named this talk Better Than Fiction. It is time for us to reshape our destiny and our image. We don't lack talent or money or stories. So, will we be able to do this? I believe so. I think so. I think we will, inshallah. Thank you very much.